In my previous episode, which is number 160 if you're keeping track, I discussed the conversion of an old Dynaco ST80 power amplifier into a Resto mod unit using a Fuzzy V3 Class D integrated amplifier. In that video I mentioned that I had access to an original Dynaco ST80, or nearly original, which is this guy right here, and that I would measure that in my next video, and so here we are. Now, the Dynaco ST80 was made around 70 to 72. It sold for $120 in kit form, or about $900 today, and it was about $160 already assembled. Depending on which manual for the ST80 you look at, it was rated at either 30 watts per channel into 8 ohms at not more than 0.5% THD from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, or 40 watts per channel into 8 ohms with the same THD specification. The frequency response was listed as plus or minus half a dB from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz as well. We'll find out what rating it should actually be listed at when we get into the data, whether it's 30 watts or 40 watts or somewhere in between. And as typical with my videos, I will show a little tour of the outside, and then we'll pop the cover off and see what it looks like inside. And then there will be data, of course, and I will tell you what I thought after listening to it in an A/B test with the Resto mod Dynaco ST80/Fuzzy V3 version. As I mentioned in the previous video, this guy is not fully original. It does have the original output transistors in it and driver boards and the original power switch, but the capacitors have been replaced. There's two big capacitors that couple from the output stage to your speakers. Those have been replaced, as well as the two power supply capacitors. Also, the output jacks for your speakers were replaced with three-way binding posts, and the RCA input jacks were replaced with gold-plated RCA jacks, similar to what I did, but a little bit different, and you'll see that in just a moment. So once we're done with the little tour, then I will go over the performance of the unit on the bench, and finally I will tell you how the A/B listening test went between it and the Resto mod Fuzzy V3 Dynaco ST80. Here is what I'm calling the front view of the Dynaco ST80. You can see two of the output transistors here and one of the power supply capacitors here. Now, you do have the option of having your cover on facing this way so that your speaker terminals and input terminals are here, or you could flip the cover the other way, and so your speaker terminals would be on this side here if the label was here. So that's kind of just however you want to do it. And there's only 4 screws that hold the cover down. Here is the input-output side of the ST80, and you can see how it was modified for new gold-plated RCA jacks, as well as the three-way speaker binding post. Now, the one difference between what he did and I did is he removed the rivets, where my rivets were all in place here, and I think I have a cleaner look. Sorry, Kevin. And he does have slightly different three-way binding posts. They have the little grooves in there, which are nice for turning things, but they're basically the same kind of three-way terminals other than that. Now, it does say that it's 40 watts output, so that's kind of interesting. So the owner of this did send me the manual that showed that it was 40 watts a channel, and you will see what it actually measures. Here's the power on-off switch fuse cord side of the Dynaco ST80. This is actually from the Resto mod because Kevin's ST80's labeling was all worn off on it, so I decided to show mine because everything is nice and clear. This is what the ST80 looks like once you remove the cover. These two guys are new, and they are the caps that couple to the speakers. You also have these wires here which make up part of the LC network going to your speakers. You can see at least two of the output transistors here. This power supply cap and this power supply cap have been replaced as well. Here is our THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz, of course, with the ST80 putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. You can see the channels are very well balanced. SNR's right at 76 dB, THD better than 0.02%, we'll call it. It's only got, we'll say 22.6 dB of gain, but once again, the channels are extremely well balanced. Right now I'm connected to 4 ohm loads, and we're looking at our THD SNR response with it putting out about 5 watts into 4 ohm loads. You can see our THD is still looking pretty good, better than 0.02%. And it doesn't look a lot different other than the SNR is a bit worse, which always happens when you switch from 8 ohm loads to 4 ohm loads. But overall, it looks pretty darn good. Here is the frequency response from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz with the ST80 putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. You can see how well balanced the channels are, and at the low end of the band we're down, we'll just call it 0.2 of a dB, and at the high end of the band we're only down 0.6 of a dB. Here we have the Dynaco ST80 putting out about 5 watts into 4 ohm loads, and its frequency response looks pretty much the same as it did when it was hooked up into 8 ohm loads. We're down maybe 0.1 dB at 20 hertz, and at 20 kilohertz we're down maybe 0.3 dB. Here we have the Dynaco ST80 putting out a little over 30 watts into 8 ohm loads, and the specification is that it should be able to put out 30 watts into 8 ohm loads at not more than 0.5% THD, and we're better than 0.02%. Channels are very well balanced. SNR's above 78 dB, and the gain still is at about 22.5 dB. So overall, I would say it is way meeting its specification. Now I'm going to go ahead and crank the power up and just see how much more we can get out of this guy. So we'll go up 0.5 dB on the input level, and we're not looking so happy there. We're at about 34 watts, and we're still not at a percent THD. We might be able to go up just a little bit more until we hit that magic 1%. That seems to be the number. Well, we're a little bit over that. So we're at 37 watts and, bordering 2%. And we'll call it a day for this particular amplifier. Right now we've got the Dynaco putting out about, we'll call it 34 watts into 4 ohm loads. And we're better than 0.03% THD. SNRs, we'll call it 74 dB. So not so bad right now. Not a lot different than the 8 ohm load case. And what I'm going to do is slowly increase the input signal level and see just how much power we can get out. I'm increasing it up by 1/10 of a dB at a time. And right now we're at 34.5 watts. We'll go up another 1/10 of a dB. And right now, 35 watts, we're still looking good. And it's starting to change a little bit here for the worse, but we're still not looking too bad at 36 watts. We'll go up another 1/10 of a dB. And at 37 watts, we're starting to have some issues, and the left channel particularly has gone crazy there with its THD. So that is kind of about how much this thing could go. I would call it about 35 watts, 34 watts into 4 ohm loads. In case you were wondering what the harmonics look like in the ST80, well, here it is with it putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. You can see, as expected, that the odd or third harmonics are higher than the second or even harmonics. Here we have the harmonics for the Dynaco ST80 putting out 5 watts into 4 ohm loads, and this would be at 1 kilohertz. It's kind of the opposite as it was when it was putting out 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. The even harmonics, these guys right here, are higher than the odd harmonics, which are these guys right here. Here is the ST80's THD versus frequency for several different output power levels, and that's into 8 ohms, starting off at 1 watt and going to 30 watts. The spec is that the distortion should be better than 0.5%, and we're better than 0.001%, so this guy is performing really well. Here is the ST80's Crosstalk with the active channel putting out about 5 watts into an 8 ohm load. The specification is that the crosstalk should be better than 60 dB, and we're a little shy of that. We're down to maybe 53 dB or so for the right to left crosstalk. And overall, it looks fairly decent for an amplifier of this age. Here is a plot showing the ST80's damping factor from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. its specification is that it should be greater than 40, and at worst case at 20 kilohertz it's about 32, so it's not too far off. Right here at the very low end of the band, it has kind of a drop off. Not sure what's going on there, but by 23 hertz it's above 67 or so. Here's the Dynaco ST80's Multitone Response, where they're putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. And this would translate to a distortion-free range between 11 to 12 bits. Here is a plot showing the ST80's IMD distortion, and that would be with 19 and 20 kilohertz tones applied, and the percentage is 0.06%. The specification for IMD, it's probably the old IMD, but it says that it should be better than 0.1%, and we are. Right now we're looking at the system noise of the ST80 with its inputs terminated into shorts, and the outputs are connected to 8 ohm loads. We're down about, we'll call it minus 73 dBV. So most likely I'm going to hear a slight hum or hiss when I connect it to the Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers. Right now we're looking at the difference in phase between the input and the output of the Dynaco ST80, which is hooked up to 8 ohm loads. At 1 kilohertz, we're seeing really no difference in the change of phase between the input and the output. At 100 hertz, there's probably a couple degrees of phase difference between the input and the output. And at 10 kilohertz, we have a bit more phase difference, but it's still not really bad. This is the difference in phase between the left and right channels at 10 kilohertz. Basically, there is no difference in phase between the two channels. And here is a plot of the rise time at 10 kilohertz, and it's showing about 780 nanoseconds, which is pretty quick. Now, there is no specification for the rise time. And at 1 kilohertz, it stays about the same at 750 nanoseconds. The test data showed that this particular ST80 is closer to the 30 watts per channel into 8 ohm load specification more than the 40 watts into 8 ohm loads. Now, it probably is about a 32 watt or so into 8 ohms at maybe less than the 0.5% THD it's rated at. Once you got up to 34 or 35 watts, you saw that it just started going to pot. Into 4 ohm loads, it could do, what was it, 35, 36 watts into 4 ohm loads. So, you know, that's kind of what it is. The frequency response was within the plus or minus half a dB range. It looked slightly better with the 4 ohm loads. And overall, I thought it met most of its specifications that it had. It was off a little bit here, a little bit there, but gosh, the thing's, you know, basically 50 years old. And overall, I thought it did a really nice job on the bench. It gets a little warm. I mean, you can tell that it's on when you start pushing it a little bit, but it's not at all hot. I mean, you could probably put a candle on it and it wouldn't melt it. Well, I don't think I would try that. It's not a very hot running amplifier. For my listening test, I connected it to the Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers via my AB switch, which is remote controlled, and I also connected my Carver C1 preamplifier to it, as well as the Fozzy V3 / Dynaco ST80 Arresto mod unit, so that I could do an A/B test between the two. Now, I didn't expect them to sound that much different from all the kind of tests that I do, but I thought it would be fun to do. Now, if you remember, this guy has, what, 22.5 dB of gain. The Fozzy V3 was around 25 dB of gain, so I used this little RCA volume control attenuator. So this little guy right here, we'll flip it around, and it's just a real simple passive volume control, and it allowed me to adjust the levels of the Fozzy V3 / ST80 Resto mod unit to match this guy. And I do a real good job of matching them and check a couple frequencies, usually a kilohertz, 7 kilohertz, and 440 hertz, and make sure that the voltages coming out, going into the speakers are the same for both of the amplifiers that I tested, and they were very, very close, within a few millivolts of each other. And then I listened to a variety of music, and I pushed both units probably to a little bit over 30 watts. I had my Realistic APM 100 power meter hooked up to the output of the AB switcher, and at one point I was hitting peaks a little over 30 watts into 8 ohm loads, and it got a little loud, probably 92, 93 dB SPL level at certain points of the music. Neither amplifier stressed at all. In fact, I did a lot of switching between the two amplifiers, and I heard really no difference. If you were to flip a coin, that would be who won. The sound was very close, and the Fozzy V3 amplifier could take more power, so I didn't really push it higher than about 30 watt peaks. And they both sounded good. I was getting some nice bass in the chair that I listened to, which is nice, and I pushed them with some songs that have a lot of bass just to see if there was any difference there, or a few songs that have more, I don't know, tin hats, cymbal kind of things going on. And I heard no difference between them or even the vocals. So overall, really little difference between the amplifiers, and that's kind of how it goes with a lot of the A/B testing. If you really want to save yourself some money on audio gear, get yourself a nice A/B tester. And I did a review on one. The Neo Hippo ET30 is also a good unit, and just prove to yourself what sounds better. I forgot to terminate the inputs on the ST80 and listen for hum and hiss like I normally do. However, I did listen to it when I turned it on and off, and turning it off I didn't really hear anything unusual. However, when I turned it on, it made a little bit of crackle kind of sound that a lot of vintage gear makes when it comes on. It goes away in about 2 seconds, but that's quite normal with a lot of older gear. Once again, I would love to hear your comments and experiences with this or any other amplifier that you may happen to write about in the comment section. If you liked the video, thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed, I hope you will consider doing that. I don't overload you with videos or shorts or anything. One a week. I don't ask for money. I just ask that you subscribe. It's just kind of my thing. So once again, until next time, I hope you have a great day or night.